Hello and welcome to Primrose Hall Peonies. I'm Alec White and I'm here in our potting barn for the first live event of this year. Today we're going to be talking about becoming a more confident peony grower. It's going to be about 30 minutes, 40 minutes long. So if you've got any questions, please message them in and we will try and answer them as we go along. Peonies have been a love affair of mine for many years. And one of the reasons I love them so much is that they're so easy to grow. Now, they might look very delicate and fragile, but in fact, they're terribly robust. They're pretty hardy, down to about -20, -25 degrees. And in the UK, that certainly means you won't have any problems at all. They're really low maintenance. They don't take a lot of care. You need to cut them back to the ground, the herbaceous ones at least, in the autumn time. You will need to put a plant support on them, certainly for the taller ones in the season when they get going, because they can get a bit floppy. But generally speaking, they're very easy to grow. They're not particularly demanding in terms of food, and they don't really get problems with pests and diseases. So all round, a really easy plant to grow. One thing I should say is that peonies are a great investment for your garden too. They are really long-lived. So anyone who's familiar with rubra plana, Festiva rubra plana, this is the old-fashioned cottage garden peony. Doesn't get very tall, has a bright red flower. This one will last quite comfortably for about 100 years in the garden. So once you've planted it, if you plant it correctly, actually it's going to last for decades and decades. And that's pretty much true for all of the peonies, although some of the others may be only going to last 60 years or so. Nonetheless, still a pretty good longevity, I would think. So let's kick off. Oh, before we do, we are giving away some prizes today. So listen carefully, because I've got 3 questions I'm going to ask, and we've got some prizes. We're going to give away some plant food, some of our own china mugs, look at these, only the very finest. And at the end, we're going to give away a plant as well, which unfortunately I don't have with me, so I can't show you what it's going to look like. That's a bit of a screw up, isn't it? However, let's get cracking. So becoming a confident peony grower. I guess the first place to start is really choosing the right peony for you. As I've already said, peonies aren't too fussy overall, but you do need to think about the plant that you're buying. Are you buying a bare root plant or a container grown plant? Now, all of ours are containerized, as you can see, in a nice big 5.5 litre pot. But if you are buying bare root, and it can be a more cost-effective way to do things, just remember that they are lifted in the fields in September, October time. So that's the best time to buy them. If you're buying a bare root peony at this time of year, remember it will have been kept in cold storage over the winter, and that means it will have deteriorated by now. So if you want the best results with bare roots, buy them in the autumn. But as I say, all of ours are container grown. We grow them here on the nursery. We've got them in the field and we've got them in containers. And we only sell them at the flowering. Why don't you turn the speakers off? That would solve that problem. Yeah. All of ours are grown on the nursery and they're not sold until they are at flowering maturity. That means they're at least sort of 5 years old. So bare root or potted, it's your choice. If you do go for a container grown plant, of course, you can buy them at any point in the year and you can plant them at any point in the year too. That makes my life certainly a lot easier. All of our plants, by the way, come with a 5-year guarantee. So if you buy one of our plants and you register it on the website, you will get a 5-year guarantee against failure. Doesn't happen very often at all with peonies. As I say, they're very, very tough. So let's look at where you might want to put your peony. You might want to choose a peony for a flower bed, and we've got plenty of varieties for you to choose from. We've currently got about 380 plus cultivars in commercial production, and we're producing about 60,000 containerized plants a year. So we've got plenty for you to choose from. You might want to plant as a tree peony, a woody peony. They can get to about 8 foot tall if you don't prune them back, but most of the Japanese ones are around about 4 foot tall. I've got one here which is absolutely fantastic. And you can see, oh, let me hold it up there. Can you see the picture? Right now, it's got some beautiful big buds on, so that's going to flower beautifully very soon. Nice woody stem. These do get a bit bigger, so if you've got plenty of space in the border, definitely think about tree peony, and they're quite early to flower, generally towards the end of April. If you've got something a bit smaller and you're thinking, oh, I really haven't got any space in the borders now, I need to keep it in a pot, don't worry, we've got a range just for you. We've got our patio range, and I've got a few here. So this is from our patio and container collection. There you go. This is one called Athens. There's about 8 in the collection, and these are great for containers and pots because they don't get too big. Now, growing anything in a pot comes with the obvious health warning. You do need to remember to water it. Don't overwater it. Make sure the pot's got plenty of drainage, but don't underwater it either, particularly at this time of year when it's forming its buds. And of course, remember to feed it too in a pot. So we've got Athens. I've got another one here. This one's in our fancy new grey pot. These pots, by the way, are made of recycled materials, and they are recyclable. So this is very exciting. And while we're on the environment, of course, all of our plants are potted into peat-free compost. So this is our container range, but there are other varieties too. And this is a real favourite. This is Gay Parry. And again, this one doesn't get very tall either. So this does really well in a pot too. It's just been given the Award of Garden Merit by the RHS in their recent trials. So clearly it's doing something right. So look out for the patio ones. And while we're on the subject of containers, let me just draw your attention very quickly to the intersectional peonies. These are the cross between the tree peony and the herbaceous peony. So if you're looking for the best between both worlds, this is your tree peony, and this is your herbaceous peony. This is your intersectional. Let me hold it up to the camera. This is Bartzella. Again, this has got an AGM, Award of Garden Merit from the RHS. And it kind of sits in between both the tree peonies and the herbaceous peonies. And it has a number of outstanding characteristics. The only downside is they can be a little bit pricier to start with, but remember, they're very easy to grow and they will last for decades. So let's talk about the really great thing about this. They don't need any plant supports. They only get to about 2'6", 3 foot tall. So generally, they don't need any plant supports because they've got this tree peony type framework. They will live anywhere in the garden, full sun or part shade. Any soil will do as long as it's free draining. And because of that framework, I don't know if you can see it there on the camera, they'll take a bit more of an exposed position. If you've got a slightly more windy aspect, these will do really well there too. They're really great in containers because they are so compact. They have fabulous foliage. I mean, just look at that now. We're second week of April. The foliage is looking great. And that foliage is going to be like that all the way through until the frost at the end of September, early October. The foliage on these is absolutely stunning. So it's a great all year round plant. Flowers are very often scented. They're big flowers, and you get lots and lots of them on the plant, maybe 30 or 40. And the best thing of all about all of the intersectional peonies, and we've got quite a few here today. We've got Sonoma Velvet here, Yankee Doodle Dandy, Yellow Dream. We've got about 70 or 80 different cultivars in commercial production on the nursery, and we have the Plant Heritage National Collection for intersectional hybrids. So we've got plenty of them. There's lots to choose from. But the best thing about them is they flower for twice as long as a tree peony. So if you're always worried that your peony doesn't flower for very long, why not think about an intersectional peony? Because it will give you slightly longer flowering period. Anyway, where was I? That was containers. And have a sip of tea from my Primrose Hall mug. So we also want to talk about choosing the right peony in terms of the fragrance. Many people think that peonies aren't particularly fragrant, but they are. The vast majority, I would say, have got a fragrance. Now, there are about 5 different fragrances. There's a lemony type, there's a sweet, a rose type scent, there's a musky scent. The best time to experience that is either first thing in the morning or lasting in the evening. Like everything else, the scent will evaporate throughout the day. So if you really want to get a good whiff, you need to get out first thing in the morning. And some peonies, of course, have a stronger fragrance than others. On our website, you can see a whole list where we've identified the best fragrance peonies, and it's a good place to start. Some of my favourites would be Naomi de May. Have it here. There you are, beautiful pink one. Kansas, which has been given the RHS Water Garden Merit now. That's a nice red one. We're looking at Sarah Bernhardt, which you're probably familiar with. That's got a lovely scent too. And one of my favourites, particularly at this time of year, is Claire de Lune. Wonderful fragrance on this plant. And it has a slightly bluey tinge to the foliage when it gets fully open. A very soft, creamy yellow flower. Single, beautifully scented, does very well in part shade. I think it's an absolutely gorgeous peony. So lots of fragrance on peonies. Do have a look, but it's definitely something to think about if you are choosing peony for your garden. You might also want to choose a peony as a cut flower. As you can see here, they do make excellent cut flowers. And in a vase, a cut flower peony will last at least 10 days. So you've got something that's really beautiful, really popular for weddings as well, I think, peonies. Lots and lots of choice. Again, you can grow them very easily in the garden, and lots of varieties. So let's have a look around the table here. We've got Coral Supreme, which is wonderful. It's a wonderful plant. It starts out this very deep pink. I don't know if you can see actually in the vase here. This is Coral Sunset, but they're very similar. It starts out this kind of pink, and it fades through this peachy coral colour, and eventually, I don't know if you can see in the middle here, it's starting to turn lemony cream. So it does change colour. It's absolutely amazing. Other cut flowers that are great, obviously Duchess in the middle here. Still quite small, just getting going on the nursery. It's a beautifully scented white peony that makes an excellent cut flower, as does Naomi de May that I've spoken about already. I've got, let me see what I've got here. A cut flower, we've got Peter Brand. Here we go. This makes a really nice cut flower too, with a deep red one, and again, beautifully scented. So there are lots and lots and lots of peonies that make great cut flowers. Command Performance here makes a great cut flower too. So think about cut flowers. If you're interested in the birds, the bees, the pollinators, think about the single flowering varieties, such as Jan van Leeuwen here. The bees are always, there you go. The bees are always very interested in peonies. We always have lots of them around. One of my favourites here is Doreen. Beautiful, beautiful peony, and it's beautifully scented as well. But there's lots and lots of single peonies. Have a look again on the website. We have put them there as a category. You can choose ones that are great for pollinators too. And also peonies for shade. And I hope you're getting the message now. There's a peony for everyone and a peony for every aspect of the garden, but peonies for shade too. So if I go back over here, I can show you early windflower. Can you see early windflower? This wonderful foliage, isn't it? Different, very different to anything else. Wonderful colour too. Really good in shade, as is white wings. And this is a lovely peony. Again, beautifully fragrant. And it has the most enormous white flowers. They're kind of dinner plate size. They really are huge. Does very well in shade. So there are plenty of opportunities for you to have peonies in the shade. Of course, they don't tend to flower quite so much, but the flower intensity and the fragrance is so much more. I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about the foliage. Peonies are often criticised for being a plant that doesn't flower for very long. The foliage is something to think about. It does extend the interest in the garden. Herbaceous peonies, as you can see, some of them, this is Sarah Bernhardt here on the nursery, not very tall at the moment, not that interesting. But of course, Rubra plana, slightly earlier to flower, has got some foliage going on. We talked already about Bartzella with its wonderful foliage at this time of year. And by the way, going back to Claire de Lune, this is a Claire de Lune in a slightly bigger pot. This is about 6 years old. Can you see how it's made a nice little plant there in a pot, lots and lots of bud. There must be 1, 2, 3, 4, must be 8 or 9, 10 buds on that. So really looking forward to that flowering. But the foliage also is quite interesting. As I mentioned earlier, you've got early windflower, got this beautiful foliage here. And then you've got really different foliage on Peony tenuifolia, or this one here is Tenuifolia rubriplana. But can you see how feathery and fine the foliage is? And this one is actually a really early flower. It's flowering right now in the nursery, and oh, it smells absolutely gorgeous with these deep velvety red flowers. So think about the foliage, and think also about the latter end of the year with the intersectional peonies. As I say, they have amazing colour in the autumn. Yellows, russets, browns, golds, oranges, reds, really looking fantastic in the autumn. So choosing the right peony is really down to you. There's different shapes of peony. We've got double peonies, we've got single peonies, we've got semi-doubles, we've got anemone Japanese type. So there's all sorts of different shapes. And in fact, if I can find a bomb, we've got bomb shape as well, but I don't think I've got one with me. So anyway, loads of different shapes for peonies. So think about the shape of the flower. Think about the colour. Think about the size of the plant, whether you want a tall plant or a shorter plant, whether you're going to put it in a container or in a border, what you want to use it for, whether you want fragrance or cut flowers, and then think about the flowering time. I'm going to come on to that a little bit later on, but peonies do flower from April through till the end of June, early July here in the UK. So you can get a peony flowering in your garden for plenty of time. Oh, we've got a question. What's this here? How deep should I plant my peony? John from Aberdeen. Lovely. Good question, John. I'm going to come back to that though in a moment, if I may. Is that all right? Can I do that? Yeah, cool. Okay, so it's time to win some peony food. How exciting. Here we go. We're giving away a pot of our spring fertilizer and a pot of our autumn rejuvenator. This is the feed that we use here in the nursery, and it's a slow release fertilizer. It needs to be applied once a year to each plant, and you'll find that does the trick nicely. The question that you have to answer, correct me if I'm wrong here, people, is the first person to comment on Facebook. Is that right? Yes, first person to comment on Facebook. How long is our plant guaranteed? There we go. And someone's going to win some peony food. That's exciting, isn't it? Now is the time of year to put the feed on, actually. While your peony is about this size, you can put that slow release on. I wouldn't recommend feeding with Miracle Grow or Tomarite or anything like that. It's far too exciting for a peony. They like something a bit more balanced. So some of our professional peony food is perfect for that. Right. Top tips for growing gorgeous peonies. So, John, let's answer your question. How deep should you plant your peony? For the vast majority of peonies, for herbaceous peonies, and that's most of the ones you see here on the table, they don't want to be planted any more than an inch or so below the surface. So I don't know if you can see it on the camera here. That's the crown, that hard bit just sticking out of the soil. That doesn't want to be more than 5 centimetres below the surface. If it's any deeper, the plant will flourish, will have wonderful foliage, but you simply won't get any flowers. Okay, Michael, I can't read your handwriting, has won. Right. Okay, well done, Michael. You won yourself some peony food. That's going to make your weekend. So planting it not too deep. If you've got a tree peony, like this, oh no, that's not tree peony, that's the second peony. I'm getting compost in my tea now. You want to make sure that the crown is about 6 inches below the surface. So just think about that with the tree peonies. But with the vast majority, the biggest problem by far with peonies not flowering is they're simply planted too deep. And if you're really, really good and diligent in the garden and you're mulching your borders every year, just remember to leave a space around the crown and don't bury the plant. Otherwise it won't flower. If your plant's been in the garden for a while and it used to flower and now it's not flowering, it's not because it's tired and it's not because it's worn out. It's more likely than not, it's because it's getting too much shade. So think about cutting some branches back or moving a few plants around and your peony will start to flower again in a year or two. And whilst we're on the subject of plants not flowering, I think I might have said it already, but with herbaceous peonies, maturity is everything. They don't flower until they're at least 5 years old. So do buy a nice mature plant. And as I said earlier, all of ours are sold at flowering maturity. Moving on then to feeding. I think we've covered feeding. But when you plant your peony, if you've got reasonably good soil, you probably don't need to add anything. They don't mind clay. We grow all of ours on the field in clay. Absolutely fine. They like some soil with a bit of guts. But as long as the soil is free draining, they'll be happy anywhere. So just make sure you don't have waterlogged soil. If you have got particularly light soil, and I know around here we've got the green sand ridge, and so there are areas where it is very, very sandy. It's always a good idea when you dig your hole to put a bit of mulch at the bottom, and that adds as a kind of sponge. It just stops all the goodness running away quite so quickly. I'm going to talk briefly about watering. Don't forget to water your plants. A common cause of dried up buds, particularly over the next 2 to 3 weeks, is because the peonies haven't been watered enough in the spring. So we've had a very cold start to April, haven't we? And it's really been causing havoc with the plants. I don't know whether they're coming or going. Therefore, some of the buds haven't necessarily started to develop as much as they might have done. But just be aware, once you start getting these little buds here, and I don't know if you can see those, starting to form, they're quite juvenile. Remember to water your peony. Don't let it dry out. And those buds will get nice and big. So remember to do that. And taking care of your peonies. Well, do you need to cut them back? That's a good question, isn't it? You don't need to cut them back until they've died off right to the ground. As I said earlier, they are really, really super low maintenance. They're really easy. They're great plants for beginners. If you've never grown a plant before, I would start with a peony, because as long as you follow my 3 top tips, which is to plant it at the right depth. Remember, the herbaceous peonies, that's no more than an inch or so below the surface. In full sun or part shade, so anywhere really, in any soil, as long as it's free draining. And if you do that with a nice mature plant to start with, you won't have any problems. You'll have decades and decades of flower. Easy to look after, as I say. They don't tend to get eaten by pests or diseases. So slugs, snails, rabbits, deer, not a problem. They don't tend to get any kind of problems like that. They can sometimes get peony wilt in the late summer. Not a lot you can do about it. It's not generally detrimental to the plant. My advice is just to cut it out, throw away and burn the infected material, and obviously disinfect your secateurs afterwards. But you will find the plant will come back absolutely fine the following year. You can avoid some of these problems by cutting back the plant to the ground in the autumn and making sure there's plenty of good airflow around the plant throughout the growing season. So cutting back is fairly obvious. Nature gives you a good indication. The plant will die down completely. Now, please don't be tempted to cut your plant back when it stops flowering in June, July time. The plant still is growing, and it needs that foliage. It needs to grow. It needs to get all that energy back into the roots so that it can create lovely buds for the following year. Once your peony has flowered, do you need to deadhead it? Well, that's entirely up to you. Some people say it looks unsightly, and you can just chop off the top and throw the flower away. Here's some flower heads from last year. If you don't cut them off, this is what you'll end up with. I actually think they look quite pretty, and actually, before they dry up and become desiccated like this, some of them have little purple or pink little bells on the end, so they do look very, very pretty, I think. And of course, for 60,000 plants, I don't have time to cut them back, so I just leave them till the autumn. But it's up to you. So cutting back's dead easy. Deadheading we've talked about. Tree peonies don't mind being pruned, so don't be afraid of pruning your tree peony. And every plant that we sell, by the way, just to give you a bit more confidence, every plant we sell comes with one of our care guides here. And there's lots and lots of instructions in here about how to look after your plant, how to prune it, and all the rest of it. So don't be afraid. And if you've got any questions at any point, of course, you can contact our customer service team or email us and we will help you out. So those are my top tips for growing gorgeous peonies, not just any peonies, but gorgeous peonies. It's time for another competition thingamabob. And Now, I can't believe we're doing this, but we're going to give away, now brace yourself, because we are going to give away, I feel like a market trader, a tea towel, a Primrose Hall branded tea towel. This is what you've all been waiting for your whole life. And how about this? One of our bone china Primrose Hall mugs. How about that? That's amazing, isn't it? Now, these are £12, I think, on the website. They come in these lovely little gift box type things. How about that? And I don't know how much the tea towels are. £12.50, £12, whatever. But aren't they wonderful? Look at the packaging. This is just amazing. So we're going to give those away. The question is, what kind of compost do we grow our peonies in? I forgot to give the answer, so I can't ask the question I haven't given the answer to, can I? But I have told people what the compost is. Most marvellous compost, look at that. So if you can answer the question, first person to comment on Facebook or what have you will win our tea towel and our mug. Make wonderful gifts. We've got a whole range of giftware on the website, actually teapots and all the rest of it. So if you're looking for a gift, have a look on there. It's really, really exciting stuff. So as we come up to the last sort of 10 to 15 minutes, do we have a winner?
Yes.
Wow, cool. As we come to the last 10 to 15 minutes, I'm just going to talk to you about peonies as they stand right now in the garden, because I know a lot of people are concerned about Janet Avery. I can read your handwriting. Well done, Janet. You bagged yourself a tea towel and a mug. How about that? They're good mugs, though. I can vouch for the mugs. The tea's not bad either. So, what to expect from your peonies right now? And I know a lot of people are quite concerned because of this cold weather we've been having, and it's so different to what we had last April, isn't it, where it was a mini heat wave. Some peonies are growing faster than others, and they're worried that their peony isn't necessarily performing as it should. So I want to just reassure you again that peonies are very, very tough. They don't mind the cold. They will just be a little bit behind. So if your peony in the garden is this big, can you see that on the picture? Don't worry, it's absolutely fine. Your peony may well be this big. And you might even have two plants of the same variety at different growth stages. That's perfectly normal at the moment. Peonies grow really, really quickly. And once the weather comes good and we get some nice warm weather for a couple of weeks, you will find these will shoot up very, very quickly to their 2'6", 3 foot height. And it's amazing. It's an absolute miracle every year that they go through this journey, and it happens so quickly. It really does. So don't panic. It has been very cold and the plants are still a little bit behind. Some varieties will have come forward a little bit earlier than others. So this is Coral Sunset. No, it's not. It's Coral Supreme. Very similar, but this is Coral Supreme. This is an early flowering variety. So this will usually flower at the beginning to the middle of May in the garden. Now, it does depend a little bit where you are in the country and what the climatic conditions are in your garden. But this generally flowers quite early, and you can see that it's reasonably big, and it's actually got a few buds on it. This is Sarah Bernhardt. She's a little bit later to flower, and she doesn't normally flower till the end of May, beginning of June. And you can see she's a little bit behind. So she just stays in bed a bit longer over the winter. She's getting ready. She will catch up. It's not a problem. She's just a different variety and a different cultivar. And that enables me to illustrate quite nicely. Oh, look, I put them in the wrong place. I'm going to get confused now, aren't I? There we go. It enables me to illustrate quite nicely the fact that peonies flower at different times of the year. So if you want a peony to flower in April, I would be thinking about peony tenuifolia rubroplana or straight tenuifolia. Very, very nice. Wonderful foliage. This is a great plant, actually. It comes from the mountainous regions and it's only gets to about 18 inches. Very, very tough, even though it looks delicate. As I said earlier, wonderful stems. But that flowers quite early, followed by Claire de Lune. That will generally flower for us in the nursery towards the end of April, closely followed by this one here, Starlight, which has got some wonderful buds on as well. That's another favourite of mine too. They'll be followed, look, I'm getting into a pickle now. They'll be followed by Alboplana, the white one, Rubiplaner, the red one, Rosea planer, the pink one. These guys will flower after that. And then I would normally expect to see your tree peonies flower. After the tree peonies are flowered, we'll then start to look at the mid-season flowering plants, and we've got loads of those. Kansas, here we go, look, this is Kansas, a wonderful plant. As I said earlier, it's just been given the AGM. I've never been let down by this plant. You will get 30 or 40 heads off this each year after a couple of years. It's an incredible, robust flowering plant, wonderful fragrance as well. We've got Doreen. Did I mention Doreen earlier? I've mentioned Doreen. You're getting bored of Doreen now, aren't you? But what else have we got down here? Ooh, let's look at a couple of these. This is Sword Dance. Let you into a little secret. It's one of the first plants to be sold at RHS Bridgewater. There you go, Sword Dance. And that's a nice mid-season flowering one. The Fawn. And this is one of my particular favourites. And I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but it's pink with a raspberry fleck. It is vaguely fragrant. It's not particularly strong, the fragrance on it, but it is nice. But the colour on it is absolutely incredible. And it has really strong red stems. So again, great. After the mid-season flowering ones, you've got your late-season flowering plants. And I would recommend things like Solange or Coron d'Or. Can you see that on there? Lovely, that's a late-season one. And Victoire de la Marne, which is kind of a deep ruby red, almost purple in colour. So they're flowering right at the end of the season. So if you've got the space in the garden and you can afford to get 3 or 4 plants, you can have peonies flowering from April to the end of June, early July. How amazing is that? Have a sip of tea. So what is happening beneath the ground? Right now, not a lot. The plants are desperately trying to get their feet out, and they're waiting for that cue from Mother Nature, that warm weather for the soil temperature, just to warm up a little bit for them to really send out their roots and start to grow. They are really struggling at the moment in the cold weather, but they'll get there. But just remember to be patient. Now is the time to feed them, and if you've got a taller cut flower variety, you might need to put a plant support on it now. Obviously, it's too late to do it when the plant's up here. Do it while it's nice and small. And I've talked about all the different types of varieties, so that's fine. We're going to do another little competition now before we end. No, are we? No, we're not. Yes, we are. We are going to do a competition. But I haven't told anyone the answer to the question, so I've got to wing it. I've got to wing it. So yes, well, I can't wing it on the spot like that. You can't put me. But why don't we wing Cuckoo's Nest? It's a wonderful plant. Should we give Cuckoo's Nest away, or should we do one of these? Okay, let's give away Bartzella. How about that? One of the intersectional peonies. I don't know how much we sell this for, 35, 40 pounds, something like that. And again, great plant. Here we go then. Oh, you haven't put the question on the board, Ron. I've got no questions. All right, well, first person to tell me whether our plants are, do they like to be grown in clay soil? There you go. First person to answer the question. Do they mind growing in clay soil? There you go. That then someone can win Bartzella. How about that? Have we got any more questions before I? What's this one? Roger in Chelmsford. Do they like to be moved? My peonies stop flowering. Why? I think we covered why it stopped flowering. Mostly, it's to do with the lack of sunshine. So if you've got a shady position and the plant's been flowering for years, but now it's stopped, it's probably the cause of the flowering. So make sure it's got plenty of sunlight. Make sure you don't bury the root. The other reason, and it's a bit more remote, but it's probably maturity related. Here we go here. Paula Draper. Oh, she won the plant. Cool. Super duper. Well done, Paula. Answering Roger's question, do they like to be moved? Peonies don't mind too much. They are a long-lived plant, so they are going to want to be left alone. And as I said, they're really low maintenance. So once you've planted it, you can just forget about them to a large extent. They can be moved. October is the time to do it. Wait till they've died down completely and they've entered their dormancy phase, and then you can dig them up and move them. Now remember to take a big clump. Don't get too close to the center because you will damage those buds. Try not to damage the little white hairy roots that you see coming out because they're really important for reawakening the plant in the spring. And make sure you plant it into a big hole the same day. Don't leave it out of the ground for days and days. Plant it straight away, give it a good water, and I'm sure it'll be fine. Now, if it doesn't flower the following year, don't panic. It probably will flower the year after. Sometimes they do take a year to settle down. And just remember, don't plant it too deep because that will cause a bit of a problem. So those are those questions done. All of our plants are grown in these large 5.5 litre pots. They're all grown in peat-free soil. They're all at flowering maturity. You can see a whole selection on our website now, www.primrosehallpeonies.co.uk. We've put lots of categories on there to help you choose the plants. And if you see varieties or cultivars on there that are marked as back order, that simply means the plants are growing in the nursery right now, but they're not ready yet. Now, I imagine most of the plants in the nursery will be ready in about 2 to 3 weeks' time. There are some, like the tree peonies, that may be a little bit longer, but for the vast majority of the herbaceous plants, they'll be ready for release in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So feel entirely confident, if you will, about ordering back-ordered plants because they will be sent out to you in this size pot in just 2 to 3 weeks. And if it's marked as in stock, it should be with you within 7 to 10 days. Don't forget, you get a care guide too. So hopefully, all of that gives you lots of confidence to go out now into the garden and grow lots and lots of peonies. They will fill your life with joy. There's lots and lots of them. There's lots of colours, there's lots of shapes, there's lots of fragrances. And once you start, it's very difficult to stop. So the final question is to win some more peony feed, both spring and summer. Here we go, another couple of pots. I'll pick them up, that's through my thing. There we go. And the question this time is, what size pot do we grow our peonies in? There you are. There's the question. I managed to get the answer out before I asked as well, so that's good. First person to message then on Facebook will win those as well. Anyone who has won a prize today, you will need to email customer service and they will take the details that we get all the information for shipping. Our email for customer service is customerservice@primrosehall.co.uk. Is that right? I never email it, do I? Customer service at primrosehall.co.uk. And if you get stuck and you can't remember the email address, just go on our website, use the contact us page, and that will work. Shona Lockhart has one. There you go, super duper. So we've given away a load of stuff today. Hopefully you found it interesting and you've learned something about peonies and you're now inspired and confident about growing peonies in your garden. So if you have any more questions, by all means, send them through to us. We'll do what we can to help. But for now, thank you for watching and happy gardening.